transfer of allegiance of athletes is a process that involves the requisite national federations and requires the approval of World Athletics. The J3A wishes to inform the public that to date it has neither been notified nor received a request for the transfer of allegiance of any of the 4 Jamaican athletes, whether those mentioned in the referenced media reports or any others. The J3As will continue to be guided by the World Athletics Transfer of Allegiance regulations and will engage with the requisite processes. So that is a press release coming from the J3As headed by Garth Gale. And there is just a hint of the tone of that just feels disconnected, gentlemen, because it is a fact that these athletes have acquired this citizenship, and we understand, as Paul Green verified, that it is a process, and World Athletics has to endorse, and both federations have to come to an agreement. But the J3A's stance just appears a little aloof, as if it's not connecting with the reality of this development. We understand that it isn't finalized, but I think most people I've spoken to are a little bit concerned about the J3A's press release.
The thing is, Garth Gale didn't lie. He from his standpoint, he stuck to the facts in terms of the documentation not coming through, and I understand that answer, and it's obviously an answer that you would give, especially if you're in an embarrassing situation, which the J3 is in that situation. But it wasn't an emotionally intelligent answer. That's the issue that I have with it. He must be aware of the pulse on this situation, and that it is required of him to give an answer that is not as straightforward as he gave in that press release. And I'm a little bit disappointed. It is something that we've seen on so many occasions from our politicians and our administrators, and it doesn't enhance the conversation. It doesn't encourage the public. I'm sure it doesn't encourage the sponsors and the stakeholders who put money into the track and field program. Obviously, in telephone conversations, you would like to think that he's a little bit more tailored to questions that would be posed at him. I mentioned yesterday that surely an emergency meeting would have been taking place. Apparently, one took place earlier today. After the fact, Ricardo, you're giving them room, leverage to say that surely they were on top of the situation. Surely it wouldn't have come to a place where they had to call an emergency meeting after the fact when the news reports would have come out. But apparently it's all reaction right now, and that for me is disappointing, because even with the release, you figure that there wasn't a lot of thought in it. Obviously not a lot of empathy, and it almost seems as if it's a throwaway issue. You know, we note the media reports. We note what we're hearing out there, and I don't think they've taken it with the gravity that it deserves.
Well, what I was suggesting yesterday, first of all, is that this situation should not have caught them by surprise. And therefore, if you need to have an emergency meeting for the first time on Friday morning, then
You're
that
in problem.
means you are in problem. Because that emergency meeting should have been had from days ago. As I said yesterday, if I knew from weeks ago that this was happening, the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association, or at least members of the governing body, I am sure would have heard some things as well, and their ways. And again, I hear what's in that release, but you are right. Those words are distant from reality. And that's been part of the critique of the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association, that they are here and the individuals they govern are elsewhere. In the same way that for years the field event athletes have been crying out for help.
For attention.
They've been crying out for attention. They've been crying out for, give us our personal coaches when we go to these major events. and nobody has been listening. I have long said on this show that when it comes on to support that J3As continues to say that they give to athletes, that support needs to be formalized in the same way that Anthea Charlton spoke on the show yesterday about knowing exactly where she could go and what she could access in terms of support and what she needed to apply for, is the same way Jamaican athletes need to know. And also, as it relates to the field event athletes, because it's a lot more difficult for them to get contracts, and even sometimes when they do, it is not of the same quality as the sprinters, then we shouldn't have been at this stage where there isn't something very specific in place for those athletes who have been emerging for a long time now and have been showing themselves a force, but without the type of support that our sprinters get generally. And so I think the local governing bodies certainly missed an opportunity there, and they continue to miss several opportunities. And I think I agree with both of you, they missed an opportunity today to send a different sort of message. Unless it is, they want me to read into that release that they are not allowing these guys to go anywhere. Unless the suggestion is, if we don't sign off, it's not going to happen, and we don't plan to sign off.
But you know that they will deny those suggestions, right? And that's a thing.
Well,
that's a problem that I have with the release as well.
I'm not saying that they are suggesting that, you know, but I'm saying if that's not what you are suggesting, then what's the point of this? The response has to be different given the atmosphere that we are in now, and also the fact that the rhetoric out there is that more athletes want to switch, more athletes want greener pastures. That response is just not good enough in an atmosphere like the one we find ourselves in now.
Let's be clear, though, that what the Turkish people have offered these athletes, the Jamaican administration can't compete with that.
No.
So I don't think that is at issue here. But if the J3As had been performing in a solid and impeccable way in the past, I think people would look at them a little bit more kindly when these things happen.
Yes.
I've said on this show many, many times that the person responsible for the omission of Nayoka Clunis from the Olympic team to Paris last year, as far as I know, still functions in the J3As. And that should not be. She qualified for the Olympics. She made the Olympic team. They picked her on the team and then forgot to submit her name. No, that's unforgivable. And I'm saying that whoever was responsible should not be functioning in the J3As at the moment. And this is a field event athlete.
Yes.
And I'm saying that when athletes see things like these, they enter a feeling of despair.
Yes.
You enter a feeling of despair.
There's a transparency issue as well, you know. And I'm sure the athletes themselves are having this discussion about this whole Puma Adidas deal and what happened behind the scenes. And again, the information hasn't really been forthcoming as to what that sponsorship would have looked like, where it would have gone in terms of support. And there's a lot of speculation out there that there were offers that were rejected by the J3A's board. And in that atmosphere, when we're talking about our athletes not being taken care of because of mostly financial reasons, you can't send out a press release like that.
Yeah, because the general feeling is the deals brokered by the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association benefit members of the association more than it benefits the people they govern,
That's crazy,
who are the
isn't it?
athletes. And I don't know if it is true, but that is the general feeling within the track and field fraternity in Jamaica. And I said this yesterday, that when news broke, I got so many messages of athletes and coaches who wouldn't mind getting the opportunity to switch as well and make the type of money that these athletes are making. And it's part of why the reaction has been so significantly in favor of the athletes, because so many individuals over time have become disgruntled with the running of, or the governing of the sport in the country. And the feeling is that the leaders have not done enough to move the sport forward, and specifically they have not done enough to assist our athletes. There is even talk about the contracts having bonuses for when athletes win medals at global events, but then the athletes don't necessarily benefit directly from those bonuses. And again, you speak about transparency, Donald, because that's part of the issue. So when you get an offer from Adidas, you, as an association, you barely want to say anything publicly about it and why you went with the Puma deal instead of the Adidas deal. And then the athletes are crying out for support and they can't get it. Then you should be able to understand why the public will come down on the association in scenarios like that. Having said all of that, I completely agree with you, Lance, that the type of money that we're talking about coming from Turkey and the other nations that will come, there's no competition. If it's about the money for the athletes, they are going to go. And kudos to the ones, and there are several of them, who said no to the Turkey offers and other nations and offers from other nations as well. But it's really no competition. These athletes, the four men, Roger Stoner, Rajendra Campbell, Wayne Pinnock,
And
Jaden Hibbert, don't have to be broke for the rest of their lives unless they are really poor at managing money.
Yeah, but I see that a lot of people are divided on this issue, because there are those who feel that as a Jamaican you must be patriotic and you must stand by your country and not just give up on your country because of
money,
financial benefit that you can get. But as the point would be made as well, that in other spheres of life, people do this all the time.
Yeah.
Teachers, doctors, people in different professions maximize their value because finances are very important to everyone. So, different people view this differently.
Yeah.
And the ones who have said no to the offer, those are the ones that feel that, they are Jamaicans and they don't want to give up their national pride on the count of a dangling carrot, which is very impressive, I must say.
Yes, very impressive indeed. From my standpoint, personally now, when I see it, I'm hurt. These are athletes I have covered and followed and watched from they were 9, 10, 11 years of age in some cases. And to see them switch and get ready to represent another country does hurt. But do I understand? Yes. Can I blame them? No. And there are aspects of this, Lance and Donald, where you can't blame anyone. It's just the system. Because as we pointed out, even if the government and the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association were operating at optimum efficiency, this could still happen because of the stark difference in resources that we're talking about. Turkey is a nation of 85 million people, GDP ranked in the top 20 in the world, one of the fastest growing economies. They are doing great. They have the money to splash around. This is what they do. They shop around and they try to get some of the best athletes. from around the world, from whether it is Ethiopia or Kenya or elsewhere in Africa. Their last world track and field champion came from neighboring Azerbaijan, who represented Azerbaijan as a junior before winning gold for them in 2017, Ramil Guliev. So this is what they do.
Yeah. Donald was suggesting on yesterday's show that if there is any part of this equation that he's upset with, it's Turkey.
I am.
Well, I can understand that, right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you wonder, if you have 85 million people, a nation of 85 million people, with all these resources, why aren't you investing in your own?
Yeah.
Why aren't you trying to build from the ground up?
And build a partnership with Jamaica in regards to, track and field resources and exchange of ideas and minds.
No, you're just finding a way how Jamaica can benefit.
Of course, you have to find a way of Jamaica benefit instead of them robbing the cradle.
Why are you getting upset? I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay, well, fine. Okay, I'm sorry. Proceed.
I'm just saying what you're doing.
Yes.
But yes, why aren't they investing in their own people? Is it that they don't believe in the quality of the people they have? I'm sure several of the Jamaican coaches would love to go to Turkey and assist with building a program and getting their athletes up to a particular standard. But I guess if you have money, this is the easier way to do it. Just get athletes who are ready-made. Many schools do it.
It's not a good look, though, and that to me impacts the integrity of global sport. If it is that a superpower financially can just go about and do these things, I think it's unhealthy for sport in general. And I'd put it to Paul Green yesterday when we were speaking to him that the International Basketball Federation has restrictions, that it can't be just wholesale, because we have said on the show already that 4 have confirmed their citizenship now for Turkey, but there is every possibility that that number could increase significantly.
Yes.
And what happens then? What does that look like? It just
and not just Turkey, but there are other nations who could take another 4 and another 4 and another 4, and then 4 becomes 16 in 4 different
We're talking
nations.
16 of our best.
And then you go to a global championship and you see Jamaica with 5 medals, but they have 7 with 3 other countries. I just want to make the point quickly because I know we have to rush to the break. But World Athletics has made it more difficult for these transfers to happen.
Yes.
With the revised rules from 2018, 2 things that they did. One, before you could transfer as a junior, as in the case of Salwa Eid Nasser, who transferred from Nigeria to Bahrain as a junior, or the high jumper, Barshim, who transferred from he was a junior. No, you can't transfer as a junior. And then when you get to a senior, if you competed for the previous country as a junior, you have to sit out the 3 years.
Yes.
So I think World Athletics was hoping that those 2 things would make it a significant deterrent. But it hasn't stopped them. And clearly in this instance, we are seeing a perfect example that this will continue. And it has continued, because even at the Olympics last year, I think Paul Green spoke to it yesterday as well. Kazakhstan, they're doing it, Bahrain, Qatar, Turkey, and they're going to continue to come now for the sprinting talent, and especially if the athletes are willing to go.
There's an elephant in the room that I just want to identify here, and that's in regards to the cloud, the lack of transparency and the cloud surrounding how sporting administrations, not just J3s, treat money, right? Again, the lack of transparency with the proposed Adidas deal. And you have to begin to question as to whether other entities are hesitant to contribute money, or even the government willing to put money into the coffers of these administrations if there is such a lack of transparency. I've heard discussions that maybe that was an issue against that proposed Adidas deal, that they demanded certain things to be highlighted as to what the spend would have been. And if I'm assuming that because of those kind of restrictions, J3 was like, it's all right, we'll stick with what we know, we'll stick with a relationship that we're comfortable with. And again, it's something that needs to be highlighted and something that we need to talk about as well.
Yeah, and obviously we also need to have that discussion about how do we mitigate against this happening or these things happening. I don't think we would eradicate it, to be honest. But certainly, if it ever happens again, the conversation should not be that the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association did not do all it could for the athletes and for their development. Yeah, all right, we've got to go to a break. The producer has been saying that for the last 10 minutes. So we go to a break on the SportsMax Zone. We're going to be talking about this topic a lot more next week. On Monday, we'll have a very special guest.